Welcome to Unconventional. I'm your host, Bill Tessar. Unique stories from entrepreneurs that have failed, picked themselves up, been knocked down, picked themselves up again, traveled roads that few travel. It's about digging into the successes that people have found in real estate, financing, lending, and the like. I'm a firm believer that getting up after you've been knocked down is what shapes your future as an entrepreneur. My guest today literally defines that statement. His journey reflects his resilience, survival, and a reinvention of himself, and he has a relentless drive to push forward. He started in the mortgage industry, spent a little bit of time with the property rehabilitation, and now leads Belwood Investments, a company that is democratizing retail investing for everyday people. I am thrilled to welcome to our podcast today our guest, Bo Belmont, the CEO and founder of Belwood Investments.
Thank you, Bill. Pleasure to be here.
Wow. I mean, I got to tell you, well, before we get started, I'm going to do, and this is a little bit earlier podcast than we normally do, so don't be judgy about the fact that I am pouring Macallan whiskey for Bo and myself at, I think it's 8 o'clock in the morning. So I'll just pour a one finger for both of us. Bo's looking at me right now like going, okay, I thought I was going to have espresso. Here, I'd like to cheers.
Cheers.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Thanks for having me.
So I got to tell you, most of you know that I've been in this space since I was 18 years old. And to overdate myself, that would be 39 years. Do the math. 39 years in lending. And I will tell you that I have never, ever come across a story like yours. Like never. And Bo and I have not only done business together, but we've had some time to talk personally about his story. And I was just really excited about you sharing it with others because it's scary. It's very inspirational. And I actually, when we finished that last 2-hour conversation, I thought, I get it now. I get why you put yourself out in the way that you do because you're fearless, and you're fearless for a reason. So we're going to jump right into that if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
Okay, so Bo will tell this story about spending a little over 4 years in arguably or unarguably the scariest, roughest prison in the United States at San Quentin. And I mean, it kind of shakes me up a little bit right now, Bo, just thinking about your day one. But why don't we back up and share how you got to that situation where San Quentin became your home for half a decade?
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks, Bill. Couldn't we just talk a little bit about real estate?
Right into it.
I mean,
yeah.
My God.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So I was in, like you said, a mortgage industry. And then 2007, when things shifted, I had to segue into flipping homes and was doing quite well. In 2013, my business was pretty much at its peak for that time frame. And I was doing many homes, restorations, a lot of renovations, flipping, if you will. And we decided to take a vacation and a family reunion, get together. It was also my cousin's 30th birthday. He's a police officer. And we decided to get an Airbnb, which is ironic because now I have tons of them.
Yeah.
But we decided to get an Airbnb in Napa County. And a little bit of a weird situation. We weren't given the address up until the last moment. And when we got the address, it wasn't really in the city of Napa. It was in the outskirts on Lake Berryessa. And we had already accumulated all of our family downtown. And we said, well, let's just go give it a shot. This is not what we expected, but let's give it a shot. We go out there, and it turns out it wasn't the best area. And there was a welcoming party, if you will, a very angry neighbor that didn't want us to be there. And the previous weekend was a bachelor party. Before that, there was a frat party there. So very, tumultuous, and we walked into a hornet's nest, if you will. Anyways, one of the first interactions we had with our neighbor there was my cousin, who's a bit of a fiery police officer, younger, and he had let my cousin know, hey, you shouldn't be there. You shouldn't be at this place. This is an illegal Airbnb. Well, my cousin had a few choice words with him, and thus started a pretty aggressive communication between the neighbor and our family. Fast forward, a couple hours, those arguments, even though we had separated ourselves, started to amount into a little bit something more, and some threats back and forth. And it was just a very uncomfortable situation. We decided to leave, go down to the lake, and get some space between us. Returning back, we were met with a party of gentlemen that supported the neighbor in his efforts on removing us from that house. And they were effective, but not until I had to kind of take some measures into my own hands. And so it was about 9:30 at night, pitch black outside. A truck pulled up and some gentlemen jumped out. We were on the second floor, in the kitchen overlooking the front yard, and the headlights kind of illuminated some gentlemen running down our driveway, and we're looking down at them saying, what the hell is going on here? And immediately my cousin, who's a police officer, kind of took action, ran downstairs, opened up the front door, and wanted to stop them from coming inside. A bit aggressive, but he had good intentions. He immediately got into an altercation with these gentlemen, and I was looked at, hey, Bo, you're the big guy in this house. What are you going to do about this? What, are you going to help Tim, or are you going to just let him get manhandled by these guys? So I decided to go down there and help him. And I heard the altercation outside of the front doors and decided, hey, you know what? There's a lot more of them than there are of us. So I need something. And right next to the front doors, there's a door into the garage. And so I opened up the garage, was looking for a 2x4, a baseball bat, something to help defend the house and my family. I had my wife and children inside, and there was 9 women in there. So it wasn't like a bachelor party where we could all go outside and meet them head to head. It was basically Tim and I, defending the family. And so I flipped on the light, and just by sheer coincidence, there was a pitchfork underneath the light switch. Pretty barbaric, pretty medieval, if you will, but that's what was there. It wasn't something I sought out. I said, okay, well, this should stop them in their tracks. I didn't intend on using it, more or less stopping them. Anyways, went outside, gave them threats to get off the property or else. Didn't work out so well. One of the gentlemen, actually the initial gentleman that had started this whole confrontation, tried to rip it out of my hands. There was a bit of a tussle over it, and I hit him one time. Didn't stab him, didn't do anything, gory like that, but it knocked him out. And it stopped the other men from coming inside, stopped the fight immediately, and they were able to pull him back into the street, away. He got up, he was awake, and wanting to fight more. Jeez. Meanwhile, we shut the doors up, we barricaded them so they couldn't come in, and proceeded to call the police and get some people out there. Because we were so far away from town, the police were over an hour away. And I needed to escape. There were more people coming, so we ended up leaving and going back to our home in El Dorado Hills. I had to sneak out the back, go down a hillside. They were looking for me specifically, but we were able to escape and go back home. That night wasn't very much sleep. We got home at probably 1 o'clock in the morning. The next day, I had called a friend of mine who was a district attorney, and I said, hey, Peter, this is what happened. He goes, this is a perfect example of self-defense. I wouldn't worry about it. You might get a letter in the mail. Something might happen. Well, that's not what happened. About 11 o'clock that next day, p.m., we were met with a SWAT team. No light introduction. It was a full-on barrage of law enforcement. And
Looking for you.
looking for me specifically. And to their defense, they were told that there was a man at large who had 4 counts of attempted murder.
Okay.
And so that's what the seriousness of the whole situation was, okay, we need to go get this guy before he, goes on a rampage, with a pitchfork, which was not the case whatsoever.
Of course.
So after hearing the helicopter and the bullhorns and seeing all the lights coming through the windows, I, woke up. There was no sleep the night before. I had to hear this noise, and we had a larger home, and I was all the way in the back. But I heard it and went outside, and a flood of lights, flood of green and red dots on me, as you can assume what those were. And I had to, crawl on my hands and knees across my front, grass area, and was met with loud dogs, in my face. And meanwhile, I was, in night clothes. There was obviously no weapons on me or anything like that. But they handled me with, a lot of intention on not letting anything happen.
They hadn't heard your side of the story at that point, right?
No, they hadn't. And so they pulled me back into the back of a Bearcat tactical vehicle, sat me down. The investigators came by, and it was like the dragnet. They had a styrofoam cup of coffee, and they said, "Yeah, that's him. Book him." It was at that time that I saw a gentleman in a ghillie suit with a full face paint and a sniper's rifle come from the back side of my house. He had been positioned in our outdoor kitchen, keeping a scope on. And so that's where...
That was the beginning of it.
That was the beginning of it. And
what charges did they actually file on you?
So there was 19 felonies that they charged me with, and it was just multiplied over every individual that was there. And
one altercation with a pitchfork.
One hit.
That guy gets hit. But if they had 4 people, it's the pitchfork times 4, 4 times 4. So they charged you. Now, what about your cousin, the cop? He doesn't say like, "Hey, man, I'm a cop. I was there. I saw it."
Oh, he did. He did. Yeah,
enough.
Absolutely. And he was charged. They ended up dropping those charges. But he was one of our main witnesses, of course, right? But the fact was, I had to go through trial to defeat all of these charges, which I was successful on the majority of them.
What were you facing in terms of time if you were convicted for what they were trying?
Life in prison.
No priors.
No priors, yeah.
Never had a problem.
No.
And now you're facing life because you were defending your family.
Yeah, so their first deal for me was 25 years.
That was the deal.
That was the deal.
To not go through court.
To not go through court, yeah.
Then you told me that you go through court, and just before they're going to make a decision, didn't they offer you, then they came back and said, "We'll give you 15 years. And you're going like, you felt like that the court went pretty good for you, correct?
Oh, yeah. So we definitely felt the court situation went well. We honestly, proved that they were lying the majority of the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very dishonest, prosecution. It was more of a mission to get me versus a mission of justice.
One of the things you said to me that I was unaware in that part of California is you have only the right to defend yourself based on, so if he had a stick, you could have a stick. If he has a knife, you could have a knife. A gun. But if he has a stick and you have a knife, then it's not fair, and so they will go after. Yeah, I had no idea about that.
Equal or lesser
weapons, if you will.
Yeah, or power, yeah.
Power.
So in this circumstance, we had made it through trial, and we were at deliberations. The jury had gone out, and it took 3 days for them to decide this. And on the 3rd day, we came back to court, and they came back with not guilty or untrue on 17 of the 19 felonies.
So felony number 1, not guilty. Felony number 2, not guilty. They're going down, and are you kind of like touching your attorney going, "Hey, this is, thank God. Thank God," right? Yeah,
exactly.
And then they come down to 18 or 19, and they go...
True. So for the account of assault with a deadly weapon, we find the Stephen Belmont guilty of assault with a deadly weapon. And there was an enhancement of that because he ended up getting some stitches in his ear when he fell and hit the concrete.
When you hear that, after you heard 17 knots, does your mind know this is not good for me? Or do you look to your attorney and go, is this okay? Is it not okay? Like, do you have an idea?
So yeah, this is the first trial that and last trial that I will ever have to go through, but it was confusion. It's like, okay, does not true mean we're good?
Yeah.
And he's looking at me and he's patting my back like, okay, we did it, Bo. And I heard some cheers, and the courtroom was filled with basically most of my supporters. There was very few people supporting the other side. And so there was a sigh of relief. And so I'm feeling, okay, things are going well. But then they said true, which was opposite of what they had been saying.
Right.
And I knew that was bad. And my heart sank into my stomach. I literally felt this heavy weight. And I just put my head down, and the courtroom went silent, absolutely silent. And I knew that it wasn't good.
Okay.
And
then how does that moment end? Is there a sentencing, or what happens there?
So at that moment, the minute they said true, I was surrounded by a group of about 12 sheriff that noticed the support inside the courtroom and didn't want to allow for any type of altercation if it were to happen. Now, my supporters are all professionals and family members, and none of that would have ever happened. But they were there with precaution. And they handcuffed me, sat me back down, and gave me the option for sentencing right there, which my attorney said, no, we're going to wait. We're going to continue this. So they ended up taking me out. I said goodbye to my family, gave my wife a kiss goodbye, and a lot of tears. It was very sad. And then they led me to an elevator down to a tunnel, which connected with the county jail. And I was
out on an OR?
Yeah.
So you weren't serving they weren't holding you during this?
No. After I left my home that night where they arrested me, they took me to a county jail and then shifted me to Napa County. And I was there for about a week. They gave me $1 million bail, which was, I think, the only time they had ever given $1 million bail in Napa was for murder. And so they placed $1 million bail on me because they could. And it took me a week to gather funds together to bail out, which wasn't easy. It definitely depleted me in a very needy time because I needed that for my defense ultimately. But I had to go to county after sentencing, which was in Napa County, and wait there for 3 months for sentencing. So I waited there. We pled with the probation or parole department to, hey, let's just go ahead and do parole on this. I'm not a threat to society or anything like that. So they denied that. Ultimately, they said, no, you're going to go to prison.
So you go to sentencing, and how does that go?
So the final offer from the DA was minimum of 10 years. They wanted me to do a minimum of 10 years. The judge had leniency on me and read all of the reports, understood the optics and understood the details. And she ultimately sentenced me to 5 years.
5 years, right then and there?
Right then and there.
Okay. And do you know where you're going when she sentences you to 5 years? Do you have an idea of what?
There's like a bunch of California state prisons. It could be all the way up on the Oregon border, could be all the way down, bordering Mexico. There's so many in between. So I didn't know where I was going, but I knew that I was going. And it wasn't until 3 days later after my sentencing that I was woken up at about 3 o'clock in the morning and told, hey, you got to go, it's your time. And, I'm like, well, where am I going? Am I going here? I had a couple ideas from other people that were in there that had said, here are your options, because they had been down that road many times, right? They're career criminals. And they said, yeah, you're going to San Quentin.
Oh my God.
And that was another kind of jaw-dropping, heart in the gut type moment where, I had heard the same things that everybody else hears about San Quentin. And here I was
now
on my way.
And so they gather your stuff, you show up, and you're, and I won't spend a lot of time here, but I think there's a couple really important points that we need to make. You get there day one. Is that the most terrifying day of your life?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And I think that's part of the process, is they really want you to know that you're no longer in control of any part of your life. And one slip up could cost you your life. And it's not necessarily the guards that you're worried about. It's not the correctional officers. It's the other inmates. When you're walking around with inmates that will never see the light of day and they're walking alongside you, and you have to worry about stepping on their foot, saying the wrong thing, talking to the wrong person, that person has nothing to lose.
So one of the things that you shared with me, which is, you told me you actually got it from Shawshank, but you had a plan.
Yes.
So you're going into San Quentin. You're not gang affiliated. Obviously, you've had no problems before. You don't want to go down that road.
No.
There's only like 3 or 4 ways you can protect yourself, and you came up with a fourth, which is, how do I bring value to prisoners that would otherwise not have this value in form of mortgage and real estate services, not just for them in prison, but for their family members outside of prison.
Yeah.
And did you think about that going in, or were you looking around? When did that come to you?
So in county jail, people found out that I was in real estate, and I was answering a few questions. But my ultimate goal when I went to prison was to absolutely stay out of absolutely everything. I didn't want to be associated with any type of white gang or neutral gang or any gang at all. I just wanted to go do my time and get back out to my family. But what I found was real estate was neutral, and real estate was something common for everybody in there. Now, they may not own real estate or have ever participated in it, but somebody in their family probably has. And if I could add value, if I could add support or consulting, if you will, to some of these folks, then perhaps I could maintain that neutrality. And that's what I did.
You were reviewing documents that people from home would send to the prison and say, no, this closing statement looks off. You have areas to negotiate here and there. And you did that, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. No, I was looking at really high interest rates. I was looking at over leveraging. I was looking at people that wanted to flip homes. I was looking at everything. And not only inmates, when I brought this to their attention, hey, where are you from? I'm a real estate guy and I'm just passing through. But I tell you what, if you or anybody in your family needs some advice when it comes to refinancing or selling a home or buying a home, I would love to help you out. And meanwhile, I'll just be here in my little corner and, this little dog cell, if you will. It was horrible in there. But that's where I maintained and was able to help people. And it started off with my cellmate, if you will, and his grandmother was in a refinance, and the LO was definitely taking it to her. And I was able to save a really terrible transaction from going through. And the grandmother was able to relay that to my cellmate that, hey, this just saved me $500 a month and $20,000. And,
and everyone talks in prison.
And it spread so fast.
Yep.
And so that was with a Latino gang, and then pretty soon there was some black gang members and some white gang members, and they all came to me not as a threat, but as somebody neutral, almost like a counselor, if you will. And I was able to consult with them and give them advice. And then I maintained just an independence from it all, to where I didn't have to negotiate or do some of the tasks that they would have other inmates do once you're entering prison, because that's ultimately what it is. They want you to do these things. And instead of that, I was able to help them.
How long from day one till then until it was the point where you said, okay, I feel like the people in here know who I am, know who I am not, know what value I can bring to them, and you're not, I know every day you're probably looking over your shoulder, but you had a little bit more comfort in knowing you were an important part of some of these people's lives and they weren't out to get you. Is that a week, a month, 4 months? When did you feel like, okay?
So I would say there was never a point in time where I felt fully comfortable there, because you're dealing with a lot of mental illness as well, where you could be talking to somebody and thinking everything is fine, and the next thing you know, you're getting stabbed.
Yeah.
There's not a really a consistency there. So I was never really fully comfortable, but I was more comfortable probably about maybe a month into it, when I had communicated with several members of different groups or organizations, allowing me to communicate amongst them and not get repercussions, right? Because you can only speak to certain groups in there. There's politics in there that are just beyond anything that we're
It's not
used
like
to.
social media marketing of your services throughout the gangs. You
Well,
can't do that.
you know, the word of mouth spread really quickly, but in there, you're not allowed to talk to certain people. You know, it's like, you can't talk to that group, you can't talk to this group. Why? Because you look like this.
Okay.
And I was able to kind of circumvent that by maintaining this independent role as a real estate guy who gave everybody advice. And people would come to me with gifts. They would give me envelopes with stamps, or they would give me, you know, some sort of commissary. And I would say, no, it's fine. You know, I'm just here to help. And
Just great.
And it was great. Yeah, no, I was able to maintain that, and I was safe. That ultimately, my goal was
Real estate saved you.
real estate saved my life. You know, I would have to say that because I saw so many people get attacked in there that didn't follow the guidelines, that didn't follow those rules. And I wasn't following the protocol in there. I was maintaining this kind of independent real estate consultant type of role, which kept me safe.
You also did some consulting for guards and even the warden.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's crazy, huh?
Yeah, so pretty soon I had guards coming up to me. They heard about this guy on the third tier who was in real estate, and they also Googled me and looked up, you know, who I was. They had access to cell phones, and obviously, and they said, okay, you know, hey, Belmont, you know, I got a rental property right now. I'm at a 7.5. Rates just dropped. You know, is it worth it to extend for another few years and lower my rate? And I said, well, let's look at this a little bit.
That's consulting you want to get exactly right. You don't want to be off on that consulting.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
You got to be
Next thing
perfect.
you know, you're in the hole.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there was no monetary goal out of this. So any way that I could save them money and be on their good side is what I did. So there was probably a lot of LOs out there that was
Didn't
upset
like you. Oh, yeah.
that there was
Who is
this
this guy?
consultant, you know, that giving them some opposite feedback of what they had been telling their clients. But yeah, it spread to the guards and then a warden. And eventually, I was able to get a job at the school and was the assistant to a principal, had my own office where I had COs come into my office and get consulting,
That's
sit
great.
down and
Unbelievable.
talk retirement, where they could pull money from, cash out refis, everything.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
As we get out of San Quentin, just tell me that one story. Then we're going to jump into more of the real estate stuff about you looking over the bay out the window and seeing the houses on the other side, because you're in Northern Cal, right?
Yeah, right in the Bay Area. San Quentin is actually some prime real estate, and a family-owned lot for many, many years, like over 100 years. It's probably one of the oldest prisons in the United States, I think. But anyways, it sits on the water, and there was only a couple times I went to the yard because it was a very violent place. And, you know, I had seen some things out there the first time that I said, I don't want to do this again. But I started getting very pale and just, I needed sunlight. So I went out there the second time, and I had my hands on the fence, and I'm looking across the water, beautiful. And I was just kind of imagining myself in a different place. Hard to do, but I saw some homes across the bay, and beautiful homes. And I said, you know, God, let me please just get out of here and buy one of those houses and flip one of those houses and get back to the swing of things. Let me get back to my family. Let me start my life again. And it was ironic. After I had gotten out, about a year later, I'm looking at a property in Corte Madera, and it was in Mariners Cove. And I hadn't put two and two together, but I walk into the backyard of this place, and I look across the water, and I recognize a large building. And sure enough, it was San Quentin. And I was in the community that I was looking at through the fence across the water while I was now looking back.
And that was what, like four years later?
Yeah, it was about 4 years later. Yeah, exactly.
So you get out. I'm going to fast track.
And I bought that house, by the way.
You did?
And it was on YOLO Street.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was. And did real well on it. But it really came full circle with that house.
So you get out. And as we get into your real estate career, real quick, what was the first meal you had when you got out of prison?
It was a Carl's Jr. hamburger.
How was that?
It was like prime rib to me.
Was it unbelievable?
It was absolutely unbelievable.
Did you have a shake or anything like that with it?
Yeah, my cousin had picked me up, and it was the first thing that we saw. And I. Sure, I would have loved some, petite fillet and a tail or something like that.
It's kind of like that, though, right?
But I'm going to tell you right now, it was the best thing that I'd had. Yeah, so it was great, and it was, it was also humbling too. It was also like the sign of, hey, we're starting over again.
Yep.
And it was a Carl's Jr. cheeseburger.
So did you get right back into it? So you get home, you're like, okay, man, I need to get back to work.
Oh, I had to start off from -0. I had restitution to pay. I had investors that I had been working with in the past that still supported me, but were a little cautious.
Sure.
Here is this real estate guy that they had trusted and everything like that, and now has gone to prison and is back. Is he the same guy?
Yeah.
And so I was able to wholesale a property.
Okay.
And, honestly, I ended up getting a divorce right when I got out. My wife at the time didn't visit me while I was there. It was too hard for her. Yeah. So I didn't get any visits from her, and which really impacted me. And then when I got home, it was like, oh, well, nothing ever happened. But to me, that was something I couldn't shake. So I needed to move out of our home together, and I wholesaled a property to another investor that was, a competitor, if you will, in the Sacramento marketplace. But I was able to make $10,000.
You make wholesale deal, you make 10 grand.
10
That's
grand.
some money.
Yeah, and so I was able to get an apartment and buy a truck.
Okay.
So once I had those two tools, I was then able to start looking at other houses to either wholesale or to take on as a flip. And this is how I started flipping homes in the first place. When the market crashed in 2007, 2008, I had to segue into something. And so I flipped my first 3 houses by myself. I literally read books and YouTube and figured out what it was done. And here I found myself after, doing several hundred homes, prior to that, I found myself covered in dirt and fire debris because I found a burnt down house that nobody was willing to take on. And I found one investor who said, hey, I'm going to give you another shot. He gave me the capital, the down payment, and I was able to get a hard money loan. And I did the work myself again.
Which area was this?
This was in Antelope in Sacramento.
Okay, all right.
And, Rio Linda. The first house I ever flipped was in Antelope. So it was in Rio Linda. It was on a couple acres. It was the garage had burnt into the home, but the house, other than soot and, damage, all that could be handled. And I've done them before.
Yep.
So I did it again. I was able to do the majority of the work myself, and ended up selling for a great profit. That investor had great returns. That was more of, my typical Belwood investments type of transaction where I split the profits 50-50.
Yep.
This time was just one person rather than fractionalizing it.
So he did great.
He did amazing. He made 80% on his money.
Okay.
And then that was proving grounds for my other investor to say, okay, he's back into it. He's getting the typical numbers that he did.
And what year was that?
That was in 2018.
Okay, so 2018. Now you got some people interested in bringing. Yep. So now you're just sourcing deals.
Now, so now I'm sourcing deals again. I'm more involved. I literally had to start from where I had started back in 2008, building up my investor portfolio, acquisitions team, building up construction teams.
Call by call, person by person.
Oh, hundreds of calls. And I'm negotiating these deals on the phone, right? And that's one of the things I pride myself in, is being able to negotiate these transactions, hence one of our trademark deals recently. But I started over again, got my investor portfolio back, and it really, really catapulted me into a market that I hadn't expected. A lot of people trusted, my performance. They were able to overlook what had happened, and my investor portfolio grew. Right now we're at about 4,000 people. 4,000
people that have either have at least invested with you on one.
So they are placing bids through our application, or they have invested.
So let's go to that, because this is really fascinating how you approach real estate investing. So I know in the beginning we talked about democratizing it. Talk about what that means to you. And before you do, Belwood Investments, did you start that after you came out, or was Belwood Investments before and then it was reinvigorated after?
Yes, so before it was Broker Homes, BROCAR. My son's name was Brody and my partner's name was Carson, so we combined those.
Okay.
And that was my business up until 2013 when that happened.
Then you came out, you started Belwood?
Came out and I started Belwood. I started the LLC. I got out in April 18th of 2018 and I started Belwood on May 10th, the following month.
Okay, that a baby. Wasted no time.
No time.
Did a couple deals, wholesale. Now you got some stuff going on.
Got
and
some
then
traction.
At what point did you have enough investors where you felt you could start being hyper selective in properties and like you calling your own shots as opposed to I'm going to wholesale a quick deal, get quick 10 grand? Like,
Yeah.
Was that a year in?
So I actually did a multi-pronged approach. I was wholesaling to continue to give me capital to provide, short-term bridge loans, during these transactions rather than having to go get hard money financing and deplete the profit on these. So it was wholesale mixed with, actually taking these to fruition and being able to sell them.
So walk us through that now today. You find a property. Talk about your app. Talk about how people
Sure.
get to invest through you.
Sure. So the whole premise of Belwood when I first started was to not only flip homes on my own, but for my friends who were watching what I was doing, who were saying, Bo, I want to do what you're doing. And I said, okay, well, quit your job, cash in your 401k, throw the dice, and good luck to you.
Yeah.
And they said, no, I can't do it. And so that really gave me the idea back in 2008 was to, hey, I can partner with people on these, joint venture, and give them the means of participating in a market that's very aggressive. You can lose in if you're not careful. The deal is made in the acquisition. And so I was able to leverage my experience. And so pretty soon, one friend led to another and led to another. And I was able to do more transactions alongside the transactions I was doing on my own. And so while I was gone, I was able to put together a business plan to take this to the next level. And I wanted to make it a global investment opportunity because I knew that it had worked for my previous partners and my previous investors. So in 2018, when I got my momentum, I got my feet underneath me and was moving forward, that I said, okay, now's the time to strike. I need to start offering this to more people rather than just word of mouth. And I started working with an app company, App Nouveau out of Canada. I'm putting together a platform for people that didn't know me personally, but could look at our investment opportunities and then decide if they wanted to partner on them, just like my previous friends.
Okay.
And so that was in 2018 that we started that ball rolling. And then in 2019, we launched version 1 of the Belwood Investor app.
Okay.
And that would showcase the houses that I had been negotiating, the houses that I had in contract, and then also give updates on these properties when they chose to invest on them, updates on how they're going and what's going on. And, any hiccups, any changes in the economics of the transaction, when we're hitting the market, when we're closing, how much they can get their ROI.
So it is an equity investment in your side. You're still securing your debt for the loan, but it is an equity investment. Therefore, there's no coupon that you're paying those people, but they are participating in all the ups.
So instead of
they are real estate investors.
Exactly. No, they get to participate in the whole real estate transaction versus all of the risk that you would normally see when entering this market without experience.
Right.
So we secure everything with a trust deed, which gives them the same type of security that a bank does, as you know, right? Yeah. So our primary lender is going to take the first position, then we'll carry the remaining cost in this project with secondary, tertiary investors. And they secure by trust deed. And instead of getting a 6% or a 10% interest and some junk fees or whatever they would typically get as a lender, they're getting upside. And Belwood splits the profit 50-50.
Wow.
And that has been performing for the last over 6 years with an average of 22.5% ROI, and we're about 250 days.
250 days from investment to distribution?
Yep.
Wow. Any deals not work where you have to go back to the guys, hey, we're all real estate investors. Elm Street didn't flip for the price we thought, and
we've done several on Elm Street. There's always an Elm Street in every town. So, so what we do is we actually plan for the worst case scenario.
Yep.
And what I mean by that is, what if we can't sell the house? That's the biggest fear when it comes to real estate investing. If you can't sell the house, then you're stuck with an asset that is becoming a debt to you, and you can quickly lose. So when we put these properties through underwriting, now we have underwriting departments, HR, admin, we're a rather large organization. One of the biggest things that we have to check off is, can we rent this out long-term, not short-term, not as a nursing, home, not as anything other than a long-term rental.
Okay.
And if that box is checked and it will cover the monthly debt, then that's something that we will invest in. Now, it's not something that we're targeting to do. We want to quickly sell it and make a bunch of money, and our investors say, yay, let me tell my friends about it and let's move on to the next, which is what happens the majority of the time. But there's about 15% of the time where we don't hit our mark, or we've sat on the market too long, where exiting that property will cause a break even or even a loss. So what we're able to do is say, hey, we actually plan for this happening. We're going to move this to a long-term rental, and we're going to cycle out short-term investors with long-term investors.
Oh.
So we have short-term investors that want to get out. They only wanted to be a part of this project for a short period of time. They wanted their quick return. They want to move on to the next. Then I have investors that want something to hold on to for a few years, a tax shelter, if you will, something of that nature. And we're able to say, okay, we're going to hold on to this for the next 3 to 5 years. That investor A is going to replace, or investor A is going to be replaced with investor B, paying them out not only their original investment, but the 20% or 15% return that they were slated to make. So let's say investor A had $1,000 on a fractional trust deed. Investor B comes in with $1,200, replaces his position. Investor A is gone. He's happy. He's moving on to other projects. Investor B is now a part of a long-term rental, in which we shift to a 90-10, where Belwood disperses 90% of the quarterly returns and only takes 10%.
Okay.
And then we have an exit strategy, which is once it reaches 20% higher than our original exit. So if we were going to sell something at $500,000, once we reach $600,000, whether that's a year or 2 years, we're going to exit.
And then you go back to your 50-50 split on the sale?
Nope. It's still 90-10.
So you're always looking out for your investors.
Always looking out for our investors.
You're basically saying, like, here's my plan. It's 50-50. We're going to the end. If that thing changes, it's changing to 90-10.
Changing to 90-10.
So you're taking the brunt of the miss, if you will.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah. And we did that because we looked at what is the ROI over a 3 to 5 year period. Does that match our current investment ratio or averages? And it wasn't. It was striking a little bit lower, probably around 10 to 12%, which is still a great return annually, but it wasn't our trademark 20 plus returns. So when we shifted to that 90-10, it brought our returns back up and made our investors a lot more happy.
I've been on your app and I see fully funded, fully funded, fully funded, fully funded, fully funded, which I think is kind of cool. If you're on the outside looking in and want to participate, you see that there's an awful lot of activity. How many homes have you done through this methodology of financing?
So right now we're close to 2,000 properties that I've flipped over the years.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
That's pretty. So Belwood Investment and CV3, we've done some deals together.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that's fearless about you is you might have your lane that you stay in, and the lane could be, you'll tell me the lane, 1 to 5 million or 800 to 7 million. You got yourself involved in a bigger property. And I do want to talk about it because I think you told me it's the most publicized piece of real estate in the United States.
In the world.
In the world.
In the world.
And we got to participate together on that.
We did.
And so why don't you start from the beginning? This is for all of you that may not read any papers or watch any social media. This is the Kanye house. that Bo and our company participated together in. So I'm going to let you take it from the top. Let's cover this for like the 5-minute version.
Sure. Well, it's the Belwood house now.
Yes.
And so we had accumulated a portfolio of thousands of investors, and a lot of those investors, they like the smaller types of homes, but then there's a lot of investors out there that love watching TMZ, they like watching HGTV, and they love looking at luxury real estate. But the access to it is so limited.
It is.
So what we had done is we started getting into luxury market where we started buying, $3 to $7 million homes. But then what had attracted me was noticing the attention put on Kanye West's home and what he had done to the property and what it was originally being sold for, which was $75 million by Richard Sachs.
So $75 million Richard Sachs bought and completed it?
So he built the home with Tadao Ando, which is one of the most famous architects in the world.
Maybe the most, right?
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. It's an art piece.
He built an Ando for $75 million on Malibu.
Yep, on Malibu
Wall
Road.
Street guy, right?
Yeah, he's a financier and art collector.
Okay. Then
Kanye came in and bought it for a deal at $57 million.
$57 million, got a deal.
Got a deal at 57.
All right.
And then he proceeded to make some modifications to it, which is what gained all of the attention online because, it's like drawing a smiley face on a Picasso or, it's something you just don't do. And so it really pushed people the wrong direction and irritated a lot of fans of Ando. But like I said, it garnered worldwide attention.
Just for the record, Bo said he did some modifications. Could you elaborate a little bit on what he did?
Sure.
He gutted.
So he gutted the property. He took out all of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing. He took out all the floors and the glazing. All of these things he did because his vision was to make it of an end of times type of bunker, heated only by a bonfire. Like this is in case the world came to an end. He wanted to have a property on the water versus all of the other stick frame homes to the left and right of them.
Yes.
If they were hit by a tsunami or a fire, which there was just a fire, the Franklin fire,
No, crazy.
that will not affect the Ondo property. There could be flames on either side of it. Every house will be gone, and this one will stay intact.
I've never seen so much concrete in a house. How far down did it go?
It goes there's 12 caissons, and they go 60 feet into the bedrock.
My God.
Bedrock, yeah.
There's so much concrete.
So much concrete. I think 1,200 tons of poured-in-place concrete and 200 tons of steel.
So Kanye goes through some changes in his own business enterprise, and that $59 million house he bought, he strips down, and then he loses interest in completing the project, and they list it for what?
$54 million.
$54 million without all the goodies.
Without all the goodies and a lot of work that needed to be done to it. So
then what happened?
Well, it sat on the market for about a month and listed by Jason Oppenheim, good friend of mine, and wasn't getting much attention.
Yep.
The buyers of these properties are billionaires.
Yep.
And they don't want to buy a flip, right? They're not in the flipping business. They're in the business of being a billionaire or whatever brought them to that.
Fun business.
I wouldn't mind it.
Yeah.
And so it was unattractive for the buyer pool. But for us, it was blood in the water because what I saw was Kanye listed it for 54 and then quickly did relatively quickly, a price reduction down to 39 million. And that's a drastic price difference.
Not as drastic as what you offered and bought it for.
Well, that's where I come in. That's where the negotiations come in because I said, okay, if he's willing to do such a drastic price cut in such a short period of time, there must be a need to sell. So I reached out to my agents with the agency and told them my approach and how I wanted them to contact Jason, and they did so. And we came in very aggressively. It was originally $20 million. And the feedback that we got was this was probably the most ideal time because Kanye was liquidating a lot of real estate in his portfolio, art, vehicles, and all of these things because of the situation that he was in. And so he was in Italy at the time. Bianca, his wife, I believe still his wife, they were going through some tough times for a moment, was signing on behalf of the LLC. And so what they were doing was slipping this contract in amongst many others. Now, when you're liquidating, let's say $1 billion worth of assets, and you're taking a $36 or $37 million loss on one, it's really a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
So we were able to get it in there, and they were able to execute at 21 million, which would cover, there was a mechanics lien that they had to include in there. And we executed at 21 and were able to call on our favorite lender, CV3.
It's crazy.
And help us close it.
Yeah, and so what made this deal different, I think at the time you closed, you had an as-is value of 28 and they had the ARV of 50 or 47, something like that. I don't remember the exact number. But I think what our investors like most about your approach is replicating it exactly like Ando did it. You used the same architects, you used the same general contractor. You're not, literally, you weren't changing anything other than maybe a piece of art that you liked at the front door. And it's like, my personal opinion is if you're restoring art to its original point at the time that it was created, you're probably better off. And this is an art piece. This isn't just a piece of real estate.
Exactly.
And having all of that group buy into your vision on that, actually support your vision on that, I think was pretty spectacular. I think without it, it's just another unbelievably beautiful piece of real estate in Malibu, and probably the most sturdy piece of real estate on the coast, maybe of any coast.
Yes.
And so congratulations for you on that. And you've been snooping around some other big properties too. I've seen you on social media. It's interesting, you say you smell blood in the water, but like at the end of the day, if somebody has a need to sell and price isn't really a determining factor and you have the ability to close, I mean, I kind of get it. It's almost embarrassing how low you come in on some of these things and to get the attention, because I would have told you behind your back, they will not, if they're listing it for 39, they're not selling it to you for 21. He doesn't have to. Yeah. And he does. Yeah. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Everybody's situation is different. Timing is everything. And, the approach has to be on point. And when we can offer a quick exit, with our capital and with our partnerships with lending, it's a pull the Band-Aid off quickly.
Yes. What's got you most excited about the real estate? Like, we've had this big political shift, and there's a lot of talk. It was interesting. I was in New York last week. I spent 4 days there, and I had like 9 meetings in 4 days, and all of the Wall Street folks call it a Trump bump. Now, I don't actually know what that means, other than there seems to be an enthusiasm around deregulation and around ease of building, especially in housing in the United States. Do you have an opinion about like what 25 looks like, 26 looks like for Belwood?
Well, optimistic, really. He's bringing a lot of people in the real estate industry into his cabinet and who understand how growth takes place. And when there's so much red tape and regulation in place, it really slows everything up. I mean, just the building and city departments, county, it takes so long to get some of these projects through that there's a housing crisis right now. Mm-hmm. There's not enough housing. There's plenty of buyers out there, but it's really slowing things up. And so if we're able to remove some of this red tape, which is what I feel confident that his administration is going to do, then we're going to be able to expedite these projects, because over the last 4 years, it has slowed down quite a bit. I mean, just to get a simple permit, is so much red tape. And when you have so many people evaluating just a simple set of plans because they want to justify their job at the county or the city, then it's going to slow things up. I mean, just to issue permits right now on some of our projects is a 4-week. We've gone through building and safety, we've gone through planning, we've gone through everything. It needs a stamp and to be handed to us. 4 weeks for that to happen. No, but it's justifying each of their positions. Yeah. Well, it's got to go to Fred, then it's got to go to Jessica, then it's got to go to Mike. And it's like, well, they all have to earn their salary versus this is a one-person, one-stamp transaction.
And you said something about the housing shortage, depending on what articles you read, that is ranging somewhere in the high 5s to low 7 million homes underwater from a supply and demand issue. And there's still a tremendous amount of dinged up real estate out there for guys like you to acquire, beautify, and sell. So, couple closing questions I have for you. Best bit of advice you've ever been given in your life from the time that you could take advice in and appreciate it?
It's a simple one, and it is you miss all of the shots you don't take.
The old Jordan one, huh?
Yes.
There's like a whole book written on, like, I missed 476 game-winning shots. And then at the end it says, I got 6 rings, I got MVP, not that, whatever it is.
Exactly. You have one life. You know, you really do. And as long as you maintain morals and ethics and give it everything you got and be fearless and have faith, then you can accomplish anything. And so that really resonates with me, and I'm a basketball fan, especially a Jordan fan.
Yeah. Well, I started our talk telling our folks that we're going to listen into a podcast that you're going to find out real quick what is unconventional about Bo. And I think that fearless piece, everyone now knows where that comes from. And I think it helps make sense of a whole bunch of different things when you take a look at how you're scaling your business, is that you are fearless. And I don't think it's a reckless fearless. I think it's a thoughtful fearless, but you're not getting mucked up in the what can go wrong. It's more like what can go right. And I actually think, Bo, your story is a special story for people that have been knocked down. Like I personally don't know anybody that has picked themselves up the way that you have and have that enthusiasm and entrepreneurial energy to just attack the world. And, it's been a pleasure to do work with you and to get to know you as a friend. And I just wanted to thank you.
Cheers. I appreciate you having me.
Again, this is before 9 o'clock in the morning. Bo, if anyone wants to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
Yeah, sure. You can go ahead and reach out to me personally at my email address, which is bo@thebigco.org, or check us out on our website, bellwoodinvestments.com. Or if you're in the App Store, it's the Belwood Investor app, and that's Belwood with 1 L.
Very good. Thank you, Bo. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.